Welcome to Shaping the Future. I'm Dr. Jeff Gold, President of the University of Nebraska System, and thanks so much for joining us today. This series, known as Shaping the Future, is dedicated to highlighting remarkable individuals who are driving change across our campuses and our communities. And today is no different. I'm honored to be joined by my colleague and friend, Mr. Mark McHargue. Mark is the president of the Nebraska Farm Bureau. He's a fourth-generation farmer from Central City who raises irrigated corn, popcorn, and soybeans, along with running a nursery and a hog finishing operation. At the Nebraska Farm Bureau, Mark and his team lead important work that enriches the lives of our state's farm and ranch communities and enhances Nebraska agriculture through advocacy, through education, and through leadership development. We'll be discussing his journey, his organization's impact on our state's #1 industry, and the critical role that the University of Nebraska plays in preparing the ag workforce of tomorrow. Mark, welcome to Shaping the Future, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gold. It's certainly a privilege to be here with you.
So as I said a minute ago during the introduction, I know you're a fourth-generation farmer here, but how did you get involved with this organization? What was the critical moment? Did your parents and grandparents have involvement with the Farm Bureau, or was this something that just happened during your time?
You know, the experience we had with Farm Bureau was really through the insurance sector. My dad kind of knew a little bit about it, but we weren't really a Farm Bureau family, you might say. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a bent for, I certainly loved agriculture and grew up in agriculture, but I always had a bent for leadership as well. Mm-hmm. And so when I became familiar with Farm Bureau and realized that Farm Bureau was the leading ag organization in the state and really in the nation, and then you pair that with just my desire to be part of an organization that could actually affect change, could be at the table having the important discussions, that's really when I became interested in Farm Bureau, and that being really one of the volunteer organizations that I could be a part of long term.
So that just gets me to my next question, which I have learned and you've helped me learn, but I'm sure our audience is interested in. How does Farm Bureau affect the future? What are your advocacy roles? How do you connect with developing the farms of the future? And how does all that come together? And what excites you about it so much?
Well, our mission, the big mission is to protect and serve Nebraska farm and ranch families. Mm-hmm. And that's a really
part of a national organization, though.
Yeah,
right?
Part of a national organization, but really a big mission. But when you boil it back to 3 key priorities, you can look at really the things that we do, work on things that are fiscal responsibility, whether it be the state's budget or the national budget, and then working on things to grow a market for the commodities and the goods that we produce. Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, making sure that we have good regulatory policy, whether that's Farm Bill or whether it's related to EPA and regulations that we have on the farm. So almost everything we work on a day-to-day basis fits under one of those 3 categories, underneath protecting and serving farm and ranch families.
Mm-hmm. So we, a little earlier, talked a bit about how this fits into the relationships with the university, and that immediately led to a discussion about precision agriculture. Yeah. And maybe you'd unpack that a little bit for us.
Precision agriculture is one of the things that has been a kind of a buzzword for a long time, but it really, when you boil it down, it's instead of farming a farm, maybe an 80 acres or a quarter by the farm, we used to say, well, we're going to go farm that Williams farm. Well, now, yes, we're farming the Williams farm, but we're really farming square feet mm-hmm. within that 80 acres, 120 acres. And so it's understanding in detail what that either yard or foot needs. So does it need water, that particular spot? Because it may need water, that spot in the other field doesn't need water. It might have a soil characteristic that holds water differently, holds nutrients differently. Matter of fact, it may need a seed that is genetically built to adhere and to perform the best in that square foot, and really not as well, 100 yards down the field, mm-hmm. and we can switch seed out sometimes.
Wow. You know, it sort of reminds me of the discussion about precision healthcare and precision medicine, because for a very long time it was sort of algorithmic. You know, you treat every strep throat the same way, you treat every case of breast cancer the same way, etc. But as we learned that the genetics of every human being are different, and their health history is different, now no two patients are really treated the same way for the same disease. I mean, they may be within a group of decision making, but in terms of the precision of that individual decision making, it's quite different.
Now, one of the things that actually lets us do, though, is manage our natural resources really well, because we're limited in the amount of land that we can farm, we're limited in the amount of water we can use, and we're limited financially in the amount of money that we could spend putting a crop in. So this
And
actually,
nutrients, I'm sure.
yeah, absolutely. So it lets us do all those things better, but really at the same time, we're growing more crop or more yield, more pounds of livestock than we've ever grown before.
Right.
But we have the ability, because of precision ag, just to do it with less natural resources.
And how does that relate to your interest in conservation of water and of nutrients and things like that? Because I'm sure that's important as well. And I know I've heard you speak about that quite a bit.
Well, in Nebraska, we know that our water is really the gold that we have here in Nebraska. And we have really good water and we have high quality water, but protecting that water is very, very important. And because we are such a large mass of our land is related to agriculture, it's really important that when we put our fertilizers and the different things that the plant needs, that we have the ability to make sure that that fertilizer all stays where that plant can grab it. And precision agriculture has allowed us to do that much, much better than before. So because of work at the university, we know that we can genetically modify a plant to use less fertilizer to start with. And then we know that we can water it differently than we've watered it 20 years ago. It takes a lot less water if we do it right. And we also have found out that if we put our fertilizers on at different times, that we can make sure that that stays in the root zone. So what that does is protect our groundwater, our greatest resource. And because of that, because of technology, because of precision ag, because of the work of the university, I am confident that we will really solve any water quality issues that we have in Nebraska.
And I know there's a lot of work that's being focused on that right now. And what I've learned through my time serving as the co-chair of the RAP group, that there are probably no two parts of the state that have identical water tables, that have identical groundwater conditions. And again, it needs to be very individualized as to how fast the nutrients, or in this case the nitrates, for instance, will pass through the ground soil into the aquifer if they're ever going to get there. And again, it comes right back to your original discussion about precision agriculture. So you mentioned several times in work with the university, and I think one of the things our audience may not appreciate is how tightly the agricultural, farming and ranching sectors work with the University of Nebraska. I know a day doesn't go by that I don't learn about some new relationship that is very exciting and very important.
Well, it really goes back to the fact that we are a land-grant university, and when you look up land grant, it really talks about the need for research. In one of those areas is agriculture, and also providing an educated workforce to work and be a part of agriculture in Nebraska. And so that fundamentally goes back to that. But Nebraska is one of the third largest ag states in the country. And so to have a relationship with the university that functions on a very, very high level is really important, because as the university goes in research and training and education to support such a large state agriculturally is critically important. And that relationship that we've developed together really is to ensure that that continues to be top of mind for people. People eat 3 times a day, but they certainly don't think about agriculture and how their food gets there.
Well, let me tell you, when I go to the grocery store now, I think much more about it than I ever used to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So do you have a glimpse of the future? What do you think agriculture looks like in 20 years? Do you have some thoughts about that? I know you and I have talked a little bit about it.
Well, Dr. Gold, that's a really great question, and I can answer that with I'm absolutely optimistic about the future. And I think because of some of the things that we've talked about, for sure, But we are just getting started in understanding soils and the gut of a cow and how all the microbes work, and the fact that we will have the ability, continued ability, to produce more for less. And I think that we're going to have the ability to grow even more nutritiously packed corn and soybeans and cattle than ever before. That's going to really provide a growing population with all the needs, and while at the same time protect our natural resources. And I think the chance to do that and the ability to do that is absolutely going to be here. And I think that's why I'm encouraging people, if you haven't driven a tractor, that doesn't mean that you can't belong to agriculture.
Well, I've done that, so
Right.
I've gone combining and many other things as well. I'm also really excited about the food for health programs, because I think not only can we enhance the nutritional impact of food, but I'll bet you that there are things that we can do with crop production and protein production that will be highly impactful on certain diseases, particularly diseases that are impacted by the human gut microbiome.
Sure.
And all of these things are tightly connected. Well, thank you for all that you do.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being with us on this segment
Yeah.
of Shaping the Future. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see you next time on Shaping the Future.